Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Unsung Heroes, the channel where we get musicians to tell their story because they've all got one to tell. Today's guest is no exception, one of arguably busiest musicians that I know, and most of the people he works with would say the same thing, and variety has been his spice of life. Today's guest is the wonderful Mr. DZAL Martin. DZAL, how's the devil are you?
I'm very well, Paul.
Good to see you, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Now, I read your bio, and I noticed you're from sort of Hertfordshire originally, but your early days appeared to be in Liverpool. What was the story behind that then?
I was in Hertford till I was 13, then my dad died, and my mother came from up north originally, so she thought it was best to go back there with two sons, teenage sons. So we moved up to Chester. She found Chester, which she thought was good for teenage people. And when I was in Chester, I went on to art school after finishing off secondary school, and got into a band in Liverpool, which was 20 miles away.
Okay. Interesting you mentioned the art school thing. On a couple of occasions I've done these interviews. The art school connection has come up quite regularly, particularly with that sort of generation that we're from.
Yeah.
It seemed to have been a breeding ground for rock and roll musicians as opposed to doing fine arts and painting somehow.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is great. As you know, a gentleman that we both know, John Fiddler, mentioned that very thing, although he did take up fine art to quite a large degree until he started his career. So you're in Chester and you start playing in Liverpool.
Yep.
And how long a period would you say that was, roughly?
It was about when I was 16. I was in my first amateur band playing at the youth clubs, and I got sort of headhunted by some bloke my brother met at college. They want a blues guitar. You do blues guitar, don't you? I said, yes, I do. So I went, it's a long story, but a horrific audition in a rugby club full of skinheads. But I got the gig and started playing in Liverpool when I was 16, 17.
Okay.
And I couldn't believe I was nearly every weekend. I never went to parties in Chester. I was always working with this band.
Yeah.
I was playing at the original Cavern and
wonderful.
the clubs in Seal Street.
Did you in that particular period in that Cavern and Liverpool area? Did you play on bills with any renowned acts at the time that were around at all?
I can't remember. Not particularly. No, I can't. I remember the Ivies were around, who became Bad Things.
That's right. Yeah.
It was that period, and I can't remember who else was around. This was about 1967.
Okay.
So Liverpool was still a big music
of
town.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
The Beatles had obviously left.
Yeah.
It's a great vibe. It was a great training for me as well.
Yeah. So I noticed it mentions in your bio that you were quite an ambitious young man, which is a good thing in this business. Without ambition, you don't get anywhere. Really.
I didn't know I was ambitious. I must have been.
Well, you are.
Thank you.
You are, dear boy. You are. So, what was the final decision to move to London? Was it the classic the streets of Purby Gold, seek my fame and fortune, or was it just simply that you thought, if I'm going to get anywhere in this business, I've got to move down there? Was it a combination of the two? Or?
Combination, Paul, yeah. Because the band, when I joined the band, it was a 6-piece with horns and keyboards, because it was a soul band.
Right, gotcha.
And we went on for a bit, and then we got down to a 3-piece, like sort of Liverpool's cream. Because the others who were great, but Mark Clark, he's big with every band.
Yeah.
He's a very great musician, Mark. They all great. And I had to up my game, and we became a 3-piece, and they decided, we need to go to London. Do you want to come? I said, yeah, I'll go for that. Surprised me, mother.
I was going to say, I mean, was this in the days when you jump in a van, you go down to London, you sleep in the back of the van till you can get somebody to put you up on a sofa for a week or so, and then you move on somewhere else? Or did you find somewhere to live straight away?
Well, straight away, only because they had the Liverpool connection.
Right.
And would you believe, I don't know, Judd Lander.
Yes, I've heard that name.
Well, Judd was his and another guy's flat. We all crashed on the floor, about 8 of us in a 1-bedroom flat in Finchley Road.
Fantastic. So the young ones meets rock and roll, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. But when you're that young and that ambitious, and music is literally all you do. You eat, sleep, and breathe music. You're in London. You're playing with this band, and then you're figuring, well, I need more than this. So you start answering adverts in the
kind of, yes,
and the NME and things like that.
What happened, very briefly, was that I was there for 6 months. Like, we wanted to get day jobs.
Yeah.
And we only did one gig in South East London in the art college down there.
Okay.
And then unfortunately the drummer and I were going up north for my birthday,
right.
my 19th birthday, and we were in a serious car crash.
Oh dear.
Unfortunately someone was killed.
Oh, that's
and we were both injured. And I had to stay back up there and recover over 3 months. And Mark had been left in London, the bass player, and he obviously found another gig, and the band split up. So when I came back to London, I'll go back to London again, try and find another band. And as you say, looking for ads in the Melody Maker. And it was actually our roadie who came in one evening and says, "You can teach guitar, can't you? Some bloke wants guitar lessons." I said, "Yeah, anything for money."
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And it turned out to be a ruse to audition me. And it was
right.
this slightly dodgy bloke managing a pop group as his new venture with money in his back pocket, you know.
Yeah.
And that was a band called March Hare.
I vaguely remember them.
You do?
I do, actually, yeah, that name rings a bell. Yeah, so, and what happened with them then? How did that turn out?
Well, that went on for about probably a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
We did some gigs, and the other guitarist was a guy called Phil Palmer, who was nephew of the Kings.
Right.
And we at one stage were sort of managed by Ray Davis.
Oh, great.
Although we didn't see much of him.
No.
And we did some demos at COX Studios.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it didn't really go anywhere. So it came to folding time, and then I answered another advert, which was, I can always remember it, showman guitarist needed for name band.
That's how they get an advert out. That's how you get the best people.
Well, hopefully so, yeah.
Yeah.
It's another long story, but basically it was the Equals, Baby Come Back and all that.
Yeah.
I answered that and got the gig, and it's the first time I'd ever earned money playing.
Wonderful.
It was great.
Yeah. And how long? Because you never really left them, did you? I mean, not in the strictest sense of the word, because obviously the original lineup, as so many of these bands from the 60s, as you know, somebody buys the name and puts a version of that band out. There might be one person in it that was in the original band. The band with Eddie Grant in it and the other guys, how long did you actually work with that core lineup originally?
Well, everyone thinks that, what about Eddie Grant? Well, he was the guitar player.
Right.
Everything was the singer, which he did sing, but Derv Gordon was the main
Right,
singer.
gotcha.
So I was effectively doing Eddie's job. There'd been one guy before, Jimmy Haynes, I think, and that didn't work out, so I was the next auditionee.
Yeah.
The rest of was the original guys.
Oh, great.
And so I was quite odd because I had hair down here, believe it or not, all that stuff. Very odd, but they liked the way I played. And it was fantastic. I was with it for 2 years. I've never worked so much in my life. It was huge fun. You know?
Yeah, well, you had a couple of hits in those days. You'd work every night of the week, wouldn't you, really?
Yeah.
Pretty much. And all over Europe, of course.
Yeah, very much. In Germany especially.
So that's your initial introduction into a full-time musician, and it's gone from nothing to everything in the space of a couple of years in terms of how much you're working.
I suppose so, yeah.
And then what happened after? Did you choose to leave? Did it just peter out? I mean, how did that work from the transition from the Equals into your next project?
Yeah. I was quite happy, and I was in a famous band and working a lot and just enjoying it, being in my early 20s. But meanwhile, I was still friends with a guy from March Hare called Gary Strange, and we still had this sort of side ambition to form a band like the Rolling Stones and the Faces.
Gotcha.
And I came back from Germany, and he says, "I found this bloke. He sounds just like Rod Stewart." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, honest." And that's how we met the legendary Peaches, Roger Ferris.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you this now. I've been a little naughty here because I know full well who he's talking about. Because I was a fan of this band. As I mentioned once before with the wonderful keyboard player that I had a chat with some time ago on another episode of Unsung Heroes, Mr. Dave Moore, who was brought in as the keyboard player for the band that DZAL is about to tell you, and they were called...
No Dice.
Absolutely. And I saw them many a time, and I was always a fan, and so much so I recorded one of their songs very badly, I might add.
I don't believe it.
No, it was terrible. That's what
I do believe it.
I'll never play it. It'll never be heard in public, only on a bet. So, from the ashes of that first exploration into being a professional musician, you made a contact with Gary, who I believe was quite an accomplished songwriter in his own right. or became one.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
He was the main writer. Yeah.
And you put the band together, and how long do you think from the start of you putting No Dice together was it before you actually got a deal? How long would you reckon it was?
The initial deal was relatively soon. We found a drummer called Chris Wiles through some music publisher. It's called Terry Noon and Ray. I can't remember Ray's last name. Anyway, so we had the core of a band, and I think they got us a deal with DJM Records, Dick James Music,
yeah,
which everyone seems to do. And we started working with them and going into their studio and demoing songs, and nothing really happening. And then we decided, somewhere along there, we needed better management, or bigger. They said you need bigger management.
Yeah.
We don't think we can take you where you want to go. And we found a company called Emka, which was Steve O'Rourke and Robert Wace, and they managed Pink Floyd and Sailor and that. And they were very interested, but they said we can't work with your contract, unfortunately. And they'd offered, I think, Dick James some money, and he just refused it. So they said, all you can do is pretend to split up and hope they don't take up the next option after a year. And that's what happened. And he didn't, amazingly. So
Wow.
we were free. And so they then started hawking us round to big people.
Yeah.
I remember auditioning for Ahmet Ertegun in a pub in Charles Hill.
Good heavens above. I mean, be honest with me. If you'd have been offered a deal by Atlantic Records, you'd have picked his hand off, wouldn't you? Surely.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the label that every musician I knew growing up, that I read about, always wanted to be signed to. You know, now business is one thing, and kudos is another. You know, and rarely do the two meet, I would imagine. So it might sound great to think, I'm on Atlantic Records, but if they're not going to do anything for you, then you're no better off than you were with DJM, I suppose. But the kudos is probably put another 500 people and pounds on the price you could charge to go out there. Do you think that would have been the case?
Possibly, but we were just being managed, you know,
Sure.
as a production deal. So we just went with them. What you think is best, and then we ended up with EMI.
Yeah.
And with Capital in America.
Right.
And off we went.
Yeah.
To try and get a career.
Of course.
Really big.
Now, I know for a fact that that there were several, well, at least one major American tour, if not two, that I know of that you did, opening for some seriously big acts at the time. You know, being on bills with your, as you mentioned in your bio, Fog Up, Rainbow, Eddie Money. There was others as well. You know, there were others I know that were mentioned, and in Europe, of course, Status Quo, who were massive at the time. I mean, just big now, but they were particularly big in those days. Do you think that? The reason it didn't quite crack was not because the music's fantastic. It's a great band. Both albums are fantastic. I say this as a fan, but it's true. If you've not heard No Dice, get out there and track them down. They're fabulous. Trust me.
Well, thank you, sir.
And they should have been huge. They are in my eyes. I'm actually I'm not worthy sort of sitting here, but in all seriousness,
But I agree with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I think they should have been enormous, and the vagaries of the music business will always baffle me, and particularly the vagaries of taste in terms of the public will always baffle me. But it's the price we pay, sadly, isn't it?
It is.
But you had 3-4 years with No Dice, was it pretty much?
The whole thing lasted for about 6 to 7 years.
Oh right, okay.
But it was just unlucky timing, Paul. I always think that I used the phrase "it was sunk by punk."
Well, I think a lot of people did. I mean, there was somebody that I loved at the same time as you. Strangely enough, I remember, this is a true story. In the days when you could buy vinyl from a small independent record shop, there was a shopping place in Wolverhampton where I'm from. It was called Sundown Records, and they used to have great bags that you could put that they print up to put your vinyl in. And on the same day I bought your album, I also bought an album by Frankie Miller called Full House.
Oh yeah.
And I took them home. And they were pivotal albums in me developing as a singer. I listened to DZAL and I loved his approach. Frankie Miller, obviously, because this is the White Otis Redding. And the combination of the sound in those two records just made me go, that's what I want to do. You know, I had a band at the time and I tried to move them in that direction, but we just weren't good enough. So I was kind of craving for that thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's such a shame I wasn't a few years older. I could have met you earlier,
Yeah.
but I don't think I'd have had the voice for it by then. I was just a fan, but that's fine, you know. So you tour Europe, you tour America and various other places. You do 2 great albums, and you must be thinking, when's this going to crack? When's this going to get through?
To an extent, but really after the second album, when all of a sudden we were so unfashionable and some unfortunate reviews in popular music papers, I saw, and then I think I think it dropped us first, the management or the record company, one of the two. I think it was the EMI dropped us, and also MCA couldn't do anything for us. So we sold it on our own until about '83, I think was the last gig we did. And we changed the lineup a little. A couple of people bailed out, a couple bailed in, and we kept going until we just thought that we couldn't keep going. So was that, and there were a few classic fallouts.
Of course, yeah. Musical differences, as we all know only too well, personality clashes. But yeah, I mean, but you've kept a core of friendships going with all of those original guys anyway, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Certainly with Munch and with
Peach and
your drummer
Chris,
you know, and I came to see your reunion gig at Dingwalls a few years ago with Paul from EMI, who was there when you were there, a big supporter of yours, you know. You said it '83. Now it's interesting this because this was around the sort of time that there was a project coming to fruition featuring ex-Yardbird members called Box of Frogs.
Oh. You noted that, didn't you?
Well, I did note that, yes, because it's the second time, and this is a very small world, this music business, people. I mean, this is 3 interviews I've done now, and they've all got several things in common. It's not planned that way; it just happens to be that that's what it's like, you know. But they're all wonderful projects, so it's not a problem. The Box of Frogs. Were you brought into that? Because I know it was ex-Yardbird guys, and it was John Fiddler was the singer. That was the main sort of essence of the band.
Yeah, exactly that.
So what was it that you were asked to do on the project? Was it the first album or the second album? How did it work for you on that one?
Both. The way it started was that I'd met John through a girlfriend, I think, and I can't remember exactly how he'd heard me play, but anyway, I got a phone call from him saying, are you interested in doing this Box of Frogs project? It's basically the Yardbirds, but we changed the name. And he said, we're going to do 5 songs, and hopefully the record company will take that, and we're going to get X members on. We're hoping Jeff Beck can do it. I said, oh, Jeff Beck. Right.
Yeah.
And basically, and the nicest way the deal was, he said, so we'd like you to play lead guitar, but if we get the deal and Jeff wants to play on it, the tracks he wants to play on, you won't be playing on.
Well, at least they were honest.
True.
And in an odd sort of way, you wouldn't mind that too much.
Well,
really.
for Jeff Beck,
you know exactly.
Yes,
anybody else, what's wrong with me? But with Jeff Beck, yes.
Yeah.
Again,
apparently he liked my playing. Apparently, so
well, there you go.
Yeah.
There we are.
But I said, yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
So we went down to the residential studio and basically did the first album there. I had so much fun. They were really funny for a start. And the playing was just huge fun to do.
Now, you got involved with the guys, you know them all, and from a historical fan of music point of view, then you become involved with them as a musician, on a level playing field.
I know.
Who else got involved in that? Because there were some other people involved on that record as well that were guests as well, apart from Jeff Beck, which there's a story I know you want to tell about him, which is quite funny, which we'll get round to in a moment. But so who else was involved in that album? Because just let me tell you this. You know, every week, if you've been watching this, I have a thing called the name drop bin. Some weeks it's been filled up. Some weeks it's been 2 bins. I've got a feeling today I'm going to need a 3rd one. So, carry on, Deez.
I have to cast my memory back who was on which album. But it sort of developed that they got the record deal and Jeff was going to play on it, which he did. And they decided to use it as a forum for other guitar players.
Okay.
Of which I was one. I think the first album there was Earl Slick.
Right.
Jeff, obviously. John Knightsbridge. And this is where I get confused. It might have been Steve Hackett or he might be on the second album. And Jimmy Page was on the second album. Rory Gallagher was on the second album. Where's you been?
It's full up. I've had to get a 4th one in.
And I was just, I know these people. I don't know them, but Christ, and
well, we're all fans.
Yeah.
The bottom line is we're all fans, right? I mean, I've just explained that. You know, I feel like I'm sitting with royalty here. You know, I've been a fan of yours for 40 years, for crying out loud. We've done gigs together, and I'm immensely flattered by that. And it's a joy. But the same applies to you with those other people, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Until you put on a guitar and play, and then it all changes, I would imagine.
Well, to an extent, I did the best I could, and I loved doing it. And there was a couple of things I listened to that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
But I was working with great people. You know, it wasn't hard to do. Ironically, some people thought Diesel was a pseudonym for Eric Clapton. I said, no, that was me.
No, it's definitely him.
Yes, it was. I was, as I always have been. Obviously, it's making the music that takes over. I just love doing it, and with them, it was fun and easy. Yeah, hence I got the call to do.
They never did any live shows, though, did they?
No,
which is an odd one. I suppose being a project like that, it would have involved perhaps asking some of the luminaries involved to come on, and then of course it all gets complicated, and who's going to do this and who's going to do that.
It's kind of like that, but we did one rehearsal because there was rumours of an American tour, and our first album was doing really well. I thought,
I heard this. Yeah,
cracking it. And we rehearsed. I can't remember. I remember. Oh God, there's that blues band from the Midlands. Great Pete. He died. I thought he was a guitarist. Pete.
Oh, the Climax Blues Band.
Yeah, Climax. Haycock. He came down and played, and I think Mickey Moody was there.
Okay, yeah.
And we were just playing the songs, and it was sounding really good.
Yeah.
I thought, this could be great. But that seemed to water down, and then suddenly it wasn't. A couple of the band that didn't want to go to America and do all that stuff. I thought, it wasn't John. John wanted to.
Yeah.
And it just watered away. Whatever the word is. No, unfortunately, but it didn't happen. There was rumours that Jeff Beck and Diesel will go on tour. Me and Jeff Beck. But it didn't happen, unfortunately, no.
So what's this funny story about Jeff Beck that you sort of hinted at? And I noticed on your bio on your website, there's a funny Jeff Beck story. People love this sort of stuff, so you've got to tell them. As long as it doesn't involve any litigiousness.
I hope you did.
That's a big word, I can tell you.
I have to remember the order. I think it was the second album. Jeff had been down, done the first album, and I'd been invited down just to watch him play, and I was there with my tongue on the desk, thinking that wouldn't be that good. And on the second album, it was about a year later, coming up to Christmas, they were doing it with more guests, and it was a residential studio. I'd been staying down there for the week, and one afternoon, Ian Jury was coming to do some vocals. Well, it might be Roger. I think it was Ian Jury. Anyway, the rest said, "Do you want to go down the pub?" I said, "Yeah, okay." Now, I'm not a great drinker. I wasn't driving, we popped down to the pub, and then we came back. I said, "Jeff's here." There's a big Corvette outside. I thought, whoa, fancy going down the pub? So back down the pub we go. Now, I wasn't drinking a lot, honest. We get back from the pub, and it's now dinner time at the studio, so we have a few glasses of wine. Now, Paul Samuel Smith, who was producing the album, the Albirds, he said, "Let's get some gang backing vocals. We'll get you singing on the album, Jeff." So we did. About 10 o'clock, we piled out into the studio, and we're all around the microphone, the headphones on, John Fiddler and Jeff Beck's there. Now, I felt okay. I really did, I thought. And I was just like this, and suddenly, it was like the TV. I thought, is it really hot in here? I just passed out. I've never passed out. I just fell over and passed out. And I woke up, literally, 10 seconds later, to Jeff Beck saying, "You're right, Diesel, I thought we were doing it for a laugh." It's so embarrassing.
Oh
my
dear.
Hero.
Listen, if you're going to pass out in front of somebody, pass out in front of your hero.
Pick the best.
That's the way. So the Box of Frogs project, it's a mouthful. Box of Frogs project, sadly peters out for you.
Yeah.
But your reputation has gone before you by this time, because I know you started to do a lot of session work.
Yeah.
Now, what were the biggest projects you got involved with as a session player, would you say? Because that bin's, I've got to get it on.
Yeah. There were sort of, I never long projects, but there were lots of well-known people, just because I was with an agency. Get the bin ready. I did 2 or 3 TV shows with Meatloaf. I did a session for Whitney Houston for the Wogan show. You had to learn the track and play it because the MU turned up.
Oh right, okay.
And I chose Tom Robinson. I did War Baby. I played on that.
Oh, that's such a great record.
Isn't it?
That's you playing on the record.
It's me and Danny.
Oh,
Danny,
wonderful.
Danny's a lovely player. Lovely
Yeah,
player.
yeah, yeah.
R.I.P. Danny, lovely guy. But yeah, that's he and I, because we would tour together with Tom Robinson, so we became good friends.
Oh, you talked with Tom Robinson as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. An interesting character, I should imagine. You know.
Yes.
Very politically active at the time,
Just
wasn't
a
it?
bit, yes.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
But a good songwriter and underrated too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that War Babies was one, and I've heard a couple of other solo things he did, which were really good songs. Not in the vein that you'd imagine him to have done with the big hit he had back in the 70s.
No.
Because War Babies is just got that lovely lilting groove and
Yeah, it's almost like jazz rock.
yeah, it's a wonderful song. Yeah. I loved it when it came out. But there's somebody you're missing out there. And you've been there's a certain Mick Jagger. You worked with Mick Jagger. Now come on, tell the world about working with Mick Jagger.
With but not.
Yes, I know what you mean.
But Rick Wakeman, there's another one.
Oh well, there we go. Yeah.
Mick Jagger. That was I was with this agency and you did videos for people. And
Right.
they were called, "Do you want to be in a Mick Jagger video?" Yes, I do. And we all get. It's about. As a band, we went down somewhere by Battersea by the Thames or something. We wanted to dress in like Panama hats and suits,
Right.
and play on a boat as it sailed down the
Gotcha.
the river.
Was this from one of his solo albums?
Yeah, this is
right,
like solo
gotcha.
tracks. Mick Jagger wasn't actually there, I have to say.
Oh, well, doesn't
I never
matter.
saw him.
You were in the video. That doesn't matter. You know. What was the song? Can you remember?
I can't remember. I really can't remember.
I'm sure you can find it on Google.
I don't. Yeah, maybe there's a video somewhere.
Yeah.
But, there was a few things like that. You know,
Yeah.
Joan Armour trading. I did a video with John actually. I did a video for.
Can you remember what that song was? Because I was a big fan of Joan Armour Trading.
I can't remember.
Because she did some interesting albums in the 80s. I mean, she became, as is well documented, quite a control freak. But in the end, she'd play everything on the album, produce it, engineer it to the whole lot. You know.
Yeah.
So was she a hard taskmaster? Would you say?
Well, again, it was only a video.
Oh, I see. Right,
down
okay,
in Dartmouth
Yeah.
somewhere. That's standing on the pylons. That's all I remember.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's probably Drop the Pilot or something like that. Maybe I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
in the 80s, which she had a few big hits in that time. She was absolutely massive, as you know. Sessions, but you never stopped doing those, though, did you? Really?
Well, I got into them by accident via Tom, actually. Fortunately, slight story. He rang me up and says, "Steve, are you busy this afternoon?" And I said, "No." I said, "Why?" He says, "I'm doing this track in a studio for a friend of mine, and Danny was going to play guitar, but he's locked himself in a wardrobe and he won't come out. Will you come down and play?" So I said, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
And I did it, and the producer took my number, said, "You do sessions?" I said, "Well, I can do. I've never done it before, but I'll have a go." And there's a studio called Dan in Queensway, and they employed me, and I did so much work for them.
Wonderful.
You know, adverts and concept albums. A guy called Adrian Snow, I did about 4 or 5 albums. Great
Wonderful.
And I got lucky to play with an extremely good player. Simon Phillips was on the first record I played him. I didn't beat him, but so that's how I got into session work, and that tided me over through the 80s because everyone was busy then.
Of course, and there was a lot more work around in those days, and of course there were a lot more people were prepared to. Yeah, there was a lot more money around, essentially.
Oh yeah,
people splashing money on all sorts of projects that half of them never saw the light of day. But you know, there was a studio every 5 minutes. You could go somewhere, you know. And I remember doing demos in most of the London studios during the 80s, without necessarily having any success with them. But we used to all sorts. We used to get a lot of dead time, you know, as they called it, when there was nothing going on, and we knew somebody who knew somebody, and that's well, you can have 4 hours or 8 hours here today, you know, and then next week we'd go somewhere else. But you know, that was great fun. So the session works continued, but the lives. When was there a period where you thought, I really miss playing live with a regular band? Did you ever get that stirring again after all those projects had been in the studio and stuff?
Well, it kind of took care of itself in a peculiar way. It was around about 1985, I think. I got a call from the Equals again, who I'd left after 2 years to form No Dice.
Yeah.
And not acrimoniously, I was a change of career. And they rang up and said, "We're doing lots of gigs in Germany. You don't have to get on the ferry and do all that nonsense. Get on the plane, bring your guitar, get paid, come home." I said, "Yeah, I'll give that a go." And that just multiplied and multiplied. And for literally about 20 years, I was always, nearly every weekend, on a plane to Germany or somewhere in Europe.
Wonderful.
Playing with the Equals.
Yeah.
And a lot of bands like the Rubettes, the Tremolos, Mungo Jerry, you name it, were all out there working.
I know that scene was massive for them.
Yeah.
Those sort of 70s bands and 60s bands in Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, I always found that playing in Germany and Europe all round as a musician was far more satisfying in lots of ways. I mean, that people seem to genuinely. I'm not saying they don't in Britain. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing it. I'm just. You just felt that when you went to Europe, they really wanted it out there.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and the work was there because of it. You know.
Yeah.
Sadly, you know, for various reasons, we're not able to do that as easily as we used to. But never mind. Good old Nigel and Boris. But that's another story.
Look at politics.
No, I daren't because I'll get all sorts of comments from people online that will probably you know cause all sorts of ructions. So we won't bother with that. But now I know that you've gigged a lot in the last few years with all sorts of things because you know as well as a session player, you're you know it's the same essence when you're booked to do gigs. It's the same thing, but. Yeah. Some of these projects have actually you've become quite a major part of, haven't you? Really, I mean, like the one you mentioned. There's a travelling Wilbury show you do, which is a wonderful show. I've seen, you know, clips online and stuff. And that's so, who are you in that?
Everyone asks me that. I say, I'm guitar playing Wilbury. That's all I do. You know,
I suppose you could pull off a Tom Petty if you tried hard enough. I suppose. Yeah.
Well, one guy does that as well as Bob Dylan.
Oh right.
But I mean, I have to dance around pedals being 5 different guitar players, you know, which I enjoy. And
absolutely,
I like it.
Well, you have the ability and the variety of playing experience to be able to pull that off really well. So that's never going to be an issue. Well, I mean, you know, on the occasions we've worked together, you know, it's never been a problem. I mean, there's some great clips of me and Diesel doing the We Remember Joe Cocker show in France. On some fun. Huge stages and doing with a little help from my friends and the whole set, you know, he's just fantastic on it and did a great job. And
that was a good band, great players.
Yeah, there was some great, I mean, mainly French musicians. I mean, they were superb, you know, and it was a joy to do that show. And it was a joy having you on board to do it with us as well.
I really enjoyed it, Paul. Really
there was a funny story one afternoon because Diesel came over to cover a couple of shows that Mike Summerland had to go back and he couldn't do them all. So Diesel had come up, so there was a crossover point where we were all rehearsing and Mike was kind of showing Diesel. There was one particular moment where I'm going out to the toilet and they're in the sort of room next to the rehearsal room, and for all you guitar aficionados out there, you missed a treat, guys. These guys were talking gauges, let me tell you. It was, for guitar aficionados, it was like guitar porn. It really was. But, you know, for me, I glazed over and, you know, I went to sleep for half an hour.
On the train, I noticed that. Yeah, we were straight there.
No, I jest. It was a totally understandable conversation to have and a great job you did too. Now, you've got round to making an album.
Yes.
Let's talk about you, Diesel the musician, Diesel the songwriter,
Thank you, sir.
Getting your show out there. What's the album called for the people out there?
It's called Drawing Horses.
Okay. Good one.
Yeah.
Now, I know for a fact there is somebody you work with and have worked with on and off whenever he comes over to the UK, which I was going to come round to, who's another one of what I could arguably be the ultimate unsung hero, is a guy called Terry Reid, who back in the 60s had just the great voice. You know, there was great singers in the 60s, you know, from Eric Burdon right up to Joe Cocker and various people in between. But Terry Reid really was something special as a singer and guitar player and songwriter, and he didn't get the break he deserved. He was lined up for the job with Led Zeppelin, and he turned it down because he had a tour. What was that tour he had to go on in America or something? Didn't he?
I think it was either supporting the Stones or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
He was committed to it. Yeah.
And you know, it's that classic sliding doors moment. You know, would Led Zeppelin have been as successful with Terry Reid? Who knows? It doesn't matter. He's gone on to make some great records of his own. When was the first time you worked with him?
2002 at the WOMAD Festival.
Oh, wow. I did that festival.
Did you do that?
Yeah, wonderful festival.
It's nice, isn't it?
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So, how did he find out about you? Did you know him already? I mean, how did that come about?
Well, no, so my best friend, who I write with, and he's a great singer, and we had a little project with sort of trying to get in the ground. Turned out he used to go to school with Terry Reid.
Right.
And he knew I was a fan, and we talk about him in glowing terms. And then suddenly he said, Terry's coming over, he hasn't got a guitar player, and Steve, our friend, suggested you. I said, really? He says, yeah, so do you want to meet up with him? I said, yes, I do. But So dug out the albums, And I went to somewhere in the East End. I sat in somebody's front room. He was very friendly, and we just sat around playing guitars a bit, and I sort of checked the keys and jammed along. So I'll see you at rehearsal tomorrow. I said, okay, right.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Wonderful. And so, how many shows would you have done it with him at that time? I mean, was he doing a lot of gigs in England, or was it just he'd specific ones?
Yeah, that particular time, I think it was. I don't need the two. I did two shows in WOMAD. I can't remember how it happened, but he would only come over sort of once or at the most twice a year to play in England, and I can't remember the order it happened in, Paul, but generally you would be any London gigs or close to London.
Sure,
he'd get a band because otherwise it was too costly.
Yeah, of course.
So he'd go solo or whatever.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, I got a call the next year, and I thought, ooh.
Yeah.
And then for the last 20 whatever it is years, except for 2 or 3 years, he brought an American band over once, American guitar player, but otherwise I've always played with them, and it's been.
And he's singing on your album, is that right?
He is. What a start! I was so knocked out and proud.
Yeah.
And gosh, Terry's singing on my album.
Yeah. Well, that's a wonderful compliment to you, and that he would proffer that.
Yeah, I was really very flattered to say that.
So it's a self-promoted album. It's not on a label or anything, is it? Or
no,
is it? No.
No.
How can people get hold of it?
Tell
them your website address.
My web is DZALMartin.com. How do you spell that? DZALMARTIN.com. And it's on Bandcamp. There's a link on my website to it.
Brilliant.
I can heartily recommend it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, anything he's on's going to be good. So, people get out there and buy the album. As you know, I always ask musicians for 2 things on this show. Is a list of songs that have influenced them. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to put Diesel's list in the description below the video when this is eventually posted. And we're also going to attempt a song, which we haven't discussed what we're going to do yet. But as I was talking to him there, something came to mind that I'm sure he knows. It reminded me a little bit when you mentioned the Faces in the Stones earlier on. I thought, he's got to know this one, and it's one that everybody knows by the Stones. Honky Tonk Woman.
Yes, I do.
Good man. Well, while you get your guitar, I'm going to do some... Yeah, we'll do it now. While you get your guitar, I'm going to do some what they call housekeeping, and then when you come back, we'll do the number.
Okay.
All right?
I hope G's all right for you.
Fine. Don't worry about keys for me. I'll just make it work somehow. Right, everybody, every week I ask this, but it will only make this channel work if you subscribe, leave comments, and eventually I'd like to build up a following that's big enough to be able to warrant having a Patreon page, but that's a way off yet. I've got many good guests lined up for this particular show, and I'm always proud and pleased as punch that people are prepared to do this with me, because I'm total novice at this, as you've probably gathered. But my approach of being a little bit slapdash and relaxed is who I am. So hopefully you'll enjoy this one. We're going to do a song together, and I'll say until the next time, I'd like to thank Diesel so much for being my guest on Unsung Heroes today. And we're going to leave you with a little song. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next one. Say goodbye, Diesel.
Goodbye, Diesel. No, thank you, Paul, for a great time. It's been really enjoyable.
It's been a pleasure. And we'll leave you with this, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. American soap barroom queen down in Memphis. She tried to take me upstairs for a ride. Have to try to leave on cross the shoulder. She blew my nose, man, or she blew my mind again. 'Cause she's a honky-tonk woman. Got to give me the honky-tonk. Well, I later, the folks said down in New York City. 'cause she's a honky-tonk woman. You give me the honky-tonk blues. 'Cause she's a honky-tonk woman. Give me the honky-tonk blues. Thank you. And thank you, Diesel. Bless
My
your heart.
pleasure.
God
Thank
bless
you,
you.
Paul.
See you next time, people.
Again.